why? Just maybe a quick answer to the question, why are you in law school? So three things. Name, at least the name that you want me to call you. Um, Year level in law school, and then why you're in law school. Yung gamay raman ta, so pwede ta very quick round of introductions. So duo lang tingali mo sa screen so I can hear you one by one. Sige na please.
Good afternoon, attorney. I'm Junaira Dumarpa. You can call me June. I'm second year, and I enrolled in law school. Uh, there's no really particular reason. I just want to become a lawyer.
Sige, hi June. Okay, next one please.
Good afternoon, attorney. I'm Arabella Rodrigo. I'm a second year student from Block A, and I'm in law school because I just find the whole thing interesting and out of interest. And
Okay, thank you. Sige, next.
hi, attorney. I'm Zoe.
Hello.
I'm in second year law school. The reason why I joined law school is that I like to learn.
Charles, kay ito na tubag. But no, it's okay. Sungog lati ka. Yes, please.
Hello, attorney. Good afternoon. My name is Brittany Anthony. I'm also a second year and I joined law school because it's been a long time dream of mine.
Pangarap sa buhay. Next, please.
Good afternoon, attorney. I'm Daniel Arceo. You can call me Dane. And I'm in law school because I believe it's what my family wants for me.
Are you also second year?
Yes, attorney.
And I'm sorry if this is a rather personal question, but is law school also something that you want for yourself?
Yes, attorney. When I was in first year, especially in first semester, I didn't want to be in law school, but eventually I learned to love it, and
So law school grew on you. That's good to hear. Next, please.
Good afternoon, attorney. My name is Romero Boniel. I am also second year and I am in law school because I want to follow the footsteps of my father.
Wala tayong mga family reasons, yun I know. Sige, next please.
Good afternoon, attorney. I'm Christy Iwanas Sinakay, and I'm also in my second year of law school. And the reason I'm in law school is because I'm just curious about the law, attorney.
Thank you. I hope curiosity will not lead you to a path that you do not really like. I hope it's been kind to you so far. Sige, next please.
Good afternoon, attorney. I am Odin Sadoganan, and I'm third year. The reason why I'm in law school because first of all, I want to help and second is to continue the legacy of my father.
Or the last part is not very clear. Continue the legacy of
My father.
your father. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, attorney. I'm Aubrey. I'm in my third year of law school. At first, I entered law school around 2019 because my late grandfather wanted me to take law school. But then I had to get into financial reasons. So now it's just out of my own volition to go take this.
Is that everyone? Has everyone been able to answer?
yes.
Salamat. Thank you for sharing. Although that was a rather personal question, I appreciate your openness to tell me about why you are here. It's important, not just for this class, but actually for the rest of your time in law school. A lot of my former students would complain that it's difficult, it's so challenging. And so the answer always is to remember your why. And if you haven't got your why figured out yet, I hope that the time before you graduate, at least you have an answer already to that question. It's okay if the answer to the why changes from time to time. We're only human. Our motivations also change according to what we experience. So to relate that maybe to how Street Law PH came about, we are a very small legal service organization working for humane drug policy in the Philippines and access to justice for vulnerable communities, including communities of people who use drugs. Wait a minute lang ha, kaya I have a little boy beside me there who is saying goodbye to Miss Yaya. Okay. So my son has autism and he's nonverbal, but he communicates in many different ways. Okay, so as I was saying, Sweet Law PH is a legal service organization working for drug policy reform. We were actually born as a reaction to the very violent war on drugs that started in well, the war on drugs has been in the Philippines longer than 2016, but it's just that the most violent examples happened during that period. Ako nga na kay mapatagad yun siya, appeal yun siya sa screen. Anyways, so I actually worked as a jail decongestion officer before we ended up forming our own organization. I was with an NGO working on jail issues, and the persistent question that was on my mind was, how come that no matter how much we spend, how much time we spend assisting people in jail, the numbers don't go down. And in fact, from the period of 2016 onwards, the numbers of people who were getting arrested and getting incarcerated were skyrocketing. And so this led me to a lot of questions, especially when you hear people say that they're afraid of being released from jail because they might die. So that was one of the questions in my mind. Like, why is it that people don't even want to be released from detention when the situation in detention is so horrible? I don't know if you have ever visited a detention facility before. Have you had experience with jail visits? Wala pa, not one of you has visited a jail in your group na ay nakasway na o visit og jail? Naa? Wala. Sige, can you raise your hand if you experience visiting a jail? Wala in the group. It's okay. It's okay, Lulu. Luis just wants to say bye-bye to his yaya. Anyway, how many ang capacity sa inyong classroom? The classroom that you are in right now, what's the capacity? What's the maximum number of students that can fit in your classroom? How many?
50 attorney.
50. 50. Sakto? Akong dungog? 50?
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine in detention, a cell or a detention facility built for, let's say, the most extreme example that we have here in Cebu province. A jail built for 120 people. So that's maybe twice as big as your classroom, right? So 2 classrooms worth, okay, 120 more or less. Maka-picture mo? Can you picture in your head how big it is? And then, react na akong anak. Imagine that classroom built for 100 people with 1,000 students. 1,000 students in 2 classrooms. Do you think if 1,000 students were housed in your 2 classrooms, what would the situation be like? Would you still be able to move freely? makatuon pa ka mo og tarong if ever. Let's say it's a class and then instead of 15 people or 50 people, you have 1,000 people in two classrooms. So let's say 500 students per classroom. How do you think it would affect your studies? Hindi mo ka-imagine sa lisod imagine nun, no? But just for the sake of discussion, how do you think it would impact the way you understand your lessons? Maminaw pa ka ang, let's say, maminaw pa ka ang 450 or ang 50 ra mo ay maka-pay attention? What do you think? And then, in those classrooms, imagine not being able to go home. What if you have two classrooms with 500 students per class, and that is where you live? That is how it is in our detention facility. You have a space built for 120 people, already occupied by 1,000. And this is just one jail. In some detention facilities, the congestion rate reaches up to 2,000%. So what does that mean? It means that the space is already occupied by 2,000 people more than what it can accommodate. Can you imagine what that might be like? Imagine being in a classroom where you are going to live there, sleep there, bathe, and it's built for 50 people, but what you have is 1,000 people. That is what detention is like in the Philippines. Now you might ask, why are so many people in detention? Why do you think? Uy, sige na, tubag mo. Sumbong tamong judge. Yung ano ba? Why do you think? Na naman mo crim law, di ba? Nag-crim naman mo? Naka-crim law 2 na mo? Or 1 pa lang?
1 and 2.
1 and 2. Nag-criminal procedure na mo?
Yes.
Oh, this sem, ang crim pro or last sem?
Year first.
So pag first year pa, nag-crim pro na mo. Sige, so why man ingon sa crim pro? Di ba unsa nakaingon sa crim pro? Unsa ganito ang period of time nga mahuman ang usa ka case? Kahila, review sa crim pro. Ang mo niya ang judge ro narabas ka jason sa kilid. Okay. Who remembers what is the period of time where a case is supposed to be concluded? Like how much time dapat? Let's say if you get arrested or a complaint is filed against you and then the information is filed in court and then nag-conduct na og pre-trial, nag-conduct na og kanang na-arraign na, yung pre-trial na, then trial na, and then submitted for decision. Like all of these steps under crim pro, sa gingon sa rules na to, how much time dapat ma-conclude siya? Pang-search. Judge, mura kinahanglan sila magpatabang nimo. Iwan na sila kay numdum, bantay gid mo sa inyong crim pro na pro. From the commencement of a case until its conclusion, walay labot appeal ha, just the decision of a criminal case. How much time according to the rules of criminal procedure dapat nga mahuman siya ang usa ka kaso? Uy, dapat hinumdum mo, anak, ipagura mo nag-crim pro. Hala. Sige, ato na ending question ha. Okay, appeal na siya sa reason nga no. Natay nga ni nga clinical legal education. Appeal na sa inyong trabahoon in the future. Ano ka ha? Sige. So anyway, just an specific step, arraignment, for example, should be done not later than how many days from the time of filing of the case, according to the rules of criminal procedure. Wala mo nang expect no nga pangutanon ta mo. No, but you have to know these things because these are part of the effects, the reasons, the different situations that are part of the impact of our existing policies. What's the period that's required under the rules of criminal procedure? So from the time that the information is filed in court, how many days should a person be, within how many days should a person or an accused be arraigned?
Arraignment.
Oh, try lang, try.
That in how many days?
Try. Guess lang mo. Should it be 6 months?
30 days.
O 30 days. Okay, but there's also a Supreme Court memorandum circular that says that if the accused is in detention while the case is pending, how many days dapat ang arraignment para ma-fast track ang case tungod kay naka-detain? I think it's a memo circular 2012, if I remember correctly.
Louder.
10 days.
Oh, 10 days only dapat ma-arraign na. Why? Nga naman, ano important man ang arraignment? Because that's the time that review. Huh? Okay, the court takes jurisdiction over the person of the accused, right, during arraignment. And then, actually, for the accused, for the person who is deprived of liberty, that is very important to them because that is the time that they will meet their public attorney if they cannot afford to hire a private lawyer. What is wrong with this picture? Why is it that the POW and the accused only get to meet each other or talk to each other during arraignment? Is that if you look at your rights, right to due process, sakto ba na siya nga mao na ang situation? No, sige. Those of you who think na no problem, this is the right procedure, sakto lang na siya, it's all right, raise your hand. Sige, so I guess all of you think that there's something wrong with that situation. Why? What's wrong? Anong wrong man na siya na situation? And try not to think of what the provisions of CrimPro, just on its face. What's wrong with the situation where an accused only meets his or her counsel for the first time during arraignment? Am I asking you difficult questions? I don't think so. I think these are things that law students are normally asked in class. Oo, guro mo mag-ingkod ra mo sa, maminaw, sorry, but you need to think about this. Why? What's wrong with the idea that an accused meets his or her counsel for the first time during arraignment? Any guesses? Naligla mo, wala ko ito lang index cards da, hindi ko ka patawag o recitation. No, but why? What's wrong with that situation? How long do you think it will take from the time that a person is arrested until one is arraigned? And between the time that the person is arrested and the person is arraigned, what could have gone? I mean, what could have gone wrong? What could have happened? And at which point does a person need a lawyer? Muraw sa mga dili mananaw mga TV show nga dakop-dakop da. Oh. Unsa gani ang requirement basta dako ng usa ka tawo? Sige. It's a requirement for an arrest to be valid. The CrimPro na gini nga review. Let's say warrantless arrest. What is the arresting officer supposed to do or say? Oh, what does the Miranda doctrine, what is the Miranda, what's that statement that the police is supposed to say during Miranda, or Miranda? Ah, memorize na ninyo Sharo, pirmi gina in every salida, di ba? In all of the crime TV shows, in all of the law school related TV shows, issue gina pirmi ang Miranda. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. You have the right to an attorney. And if you cannot afford one, the state shall provide one for you. Because we all deserve the right to due process. However, in real life, not in Netflix, not in a K-drama, not in how do you, saan ang mga salida nga law school sa Netflix ka ng How to Get Away with Murder, mga ingon ana nga mga shows. In those shows, outside of that, in real life, in the Philippines, what actually happens? People get arrested. If you go to our detention facilities and you ask people, just a show of hands, let's say you go to one cell, and there are maybe, let's say, for the sake nga, medyo okay siya na jail, 50 people in one cell. If you ask them to show of hands, how many among you here was arrested with a warrant? What's your guess? Out of the 50, pila ka ba kapok ang gidakop ng warrant? Numbers yung kung ipangayo ninyo. Out of 50, pila ka kabuok ang gidakop nga na ay warrant? Yes lang. Dili ni siya, walay scores. 5? 10? Okay. Actually, usually when we have paralegal trainings and we conduct trainings in the jails, and there are maybe 30 participants, 30 to 35, if we ask them how many of them were arrested with a warrant, we would be lucky if there are 3 people who raise their hands. So if it's 30, so that's around 10%. Okay? What does that mean? It means that the rest are arrested without a warrant. So 90%. Isn't that a problem? I mean, isn't the rule supposed to be warrant and then the exception supposed to be warrantless? Diba? Muna siya, diba? Ang dapat nasa rule na every arrest dapat may warrant. Exception to the rule ang warrantless arrest. But in reality, what happens is 90% of people are arrested without a warrant. Maybe only 10% arrested with warrants. Why do you think? What are the cases that people are mostly charged with? That allows the law enforcement to conduct warrantless arrest of almost 90% of people in detention. Yes, rats. My God, I hate that. Sorry, nilamok sa lapangan. Also, because most of the police operations involve drug-related offenses, in many situations they conduct by bus, etc., etc. So a lot of people experience warrantless arrest. I don't know if you have a chance to visit jails after your classes, maybe in the next semester. But I hope you ask people, if you have a chance, you ask those who are detained what their experiences are during arrest. Unfortunately, in most cases, there's always a situation where right is being violated, whether through evidence planting or through commission of different forms of abuse. I don't know if I'm supposed to give you a trigger warning, but this is especially problematic for women. So, trigger warning na po ha. For women who are arrested and accused of drug-related offenses, many of them are subjected not just to illegal arrest, but also to different forms of abuse, including sexual abuse and other, sometimes kulatahon. Okay, so, and these are documented. These are conversations that we have with people in detention. These are when we teach them affidavit making, because part of the skills that we teach our paralegals in jail is how to make affidavits so that it will be easier for them to narrate what happened, how they were arrested. 100% of the affidavits are about illegal arrest. And it's very heartbreaking to read the situations that they are caught in. Many of them are really caught actually without any evidence at all. Ingon pa nga, kanang dadon sila og gitawag nila photoshoot. Mag-photoshoot na, kay ready na ang evidence o picture taking ra dito. Imagine, ready kayo, prepared kayo ang law enforcement nga na sila i-photoshoot. So dakpon ka bisag walay makuha from you, but dadon sila in a place and then picture taking dito with all of the supposedly stuff that were caught on them. We've also encountered situations where people are held in detention for weeks at a time, some even months. Unsa ganito ang rule sa warrantless arrest? Pila gani ka hours? Dapat by the time mo graduate mo, dapat memorize na ninyo ha. 12, 18, 36. Depending on the weight of the extent of the penalty. Okay? So, maximum 36 hours. How many days ng 36 hours? 1.5. Technically, di ba? How come naman ma-detain o pila kasi man nga wala pa na-file na kaso? Ano man, naingon ana, itago sa sila or and some families even have had to, there was even one situation where she was only charged in court because her family filed a petition for habeas corpus in court because she was missing for weeks already. And because there was a petition for habeas corpus, the police had no choice but to file the charge in court. Imagine if this was a family with no idea what to do legally, with no idea on legal remedies. How long will the person stay missing? Okay, why? Why do they keep people in detention for a long time? Again, mag-trigger warning ko. Why do you think law enforcement, after a warrantless arrest, after all of the evidence planting and the picture taking, why are people detained for a long time before they are charged officially? What could have happened between the arrest and the charge? Can you guess? Is it something that you can imagine? Because in situations where there is physical abuse, the law enforcement agents want to wait until the wounds and bruises have healed. That's why it takes a long time. Because before a person is officially detained in a BJMP facility, they undergo physical examination. So this is why we hear of people detained secretly for weeks, sometimes even months, because they're still waiting for the injuries to be healed. Where are these injuries coming from? From the acts of physical abuse during arrest. Are you still okay? Am I making you too sad or depressed? Keri pa? No, because this is the legal system that you will be finding yourselves working in, and you need to have the stomach for it. You need to have the stomach for it. Because you need to oppose and disrupt this kind of system. We cannot let this continue. It's a disservice, it's an injustice. And we would be complicit as part of the legal system if, knowing how things are, we allow it to continue to happen. Ano ko sa angry mood. But you understand what I'm talking about? These are consequences of our existing policies. Because our policies say that if a person is caught, regardless of the amount of drugs they are caught with, have you already had a chance to study RA 9165? Sorry, I'm just gonna turn on the light. Nakatuon na mo sa RA 9165. na mo idea what the provisions are, right? I mean, I'm not your first speaker. I'm sure you already have some idea what the law's provisions are. You may notice that we don't have a minimum amount prescribed in the law. And this is unique, well, not unique to the Philippines, but we are one of few countries where there's no minimum prescription for an arrest or a criminal penalty to be imposed. Okay? In some countries, they have what they call threshold amounts. What does it mean? It means that if you exceed a certain amount, it's the only time that you will be in contact with the criminal justice system. If it's below a certain amount, there are different interventions available. Others would involve, for example, having an assessment made by a doctor or a social worker. And then there are also those that you are required to what they call an administrative penalty, pay a certain fine. Depends on the amount. Okay? And then it also varies in different countries what the amounts are considered na itawag nilang for personal consumption, and those that the amounts that are considered that you already have intent to sell or intent to traffic. Okay? These are not present in our laws, in our existing law, right? Our law says that possession, use, selling, including the possession of paraphernalia, all of these have criminal penalties, ranging from, what's the range? The penalties from mandatory rehabilitation, if you are supposedly caught for the first time using, all the way to reclusion perpetua, or even the death penalty is included in the law, right? But my question always is, would sending a person to jail help a person who is using drugs? Is it going to change their life for the better? Is it going to improve their relationship with their family? If for whatever reason they are using, is it going to make things better for them, for their family, for the communities that they are a part of? What would be the impact of arresting a person and sending them to jail, where they will spend X number of years waiting for their case to be decided? Then once their case is decided, detention. What do you think is the effect if a person is detained? Not just on the person, himself or herself, but to the family member and to the community that the person belongs to or is a part. Nakasuway na ba mo nga namoy na ilhan nga na dakpan, na priso, unsa man ang mahitabo? Dili ba siya mahimo nga fodder for chismis? Unsa man ang mahimong reputation sa usa ka tawo nga gidakop? Even if in the end, for example, let's say after a long drawn out litigation process, the court ends up dismissing the case because there is a lack of evidence or there is a problem in the illegality of the arrest. Would the person be able to find productive work if they've already experienced being arrested and in jail? Can you still take the bar exams? If you were a law student who experienced something like this, would there be someone who will issue a certificate of good moral character? Yet, I've known of a lot of people involved in cases of hazing where people have been killed and are still able to become lawyers. But if you are involved in drugs, your reputation becomes damaged, no? It's like you are, people are allergic to being associated with you. And it doesn't matter if you are innocent or guilty. Especially at a time when it's very dangerous to become considered someone who is a drug suspect, right? Mahadlok man ka. What would be the effect? Sorry, depressing kayo akong mga examples, pero mo reality, oy, saan man inato. Mo na siya. So, the consequence of being involved in drugs, whether true or not, in the Philippines, according to our laws, is you will get arrested, you will be detained. In some cases, you will be, well, actually, karon because of plea bargaining, you will undergo evaluation, testing, and then you may be required to undergo rehab. But in all of that, what is the result? What is the effect if you have a criminal conviction? Let's say you are a law student who decided one night that you wanted to stay awake and study, and coffee is not doing it enough for you. Someone says, "Oi, I have something here that can be helpful." And it's a stimulant, more effective than coffee, and you think, okay, I need this, so I will study. Unfortunately, when you were on your way home, or when you were coming back to your room to study, there was a checkpoint, and you were caught with 0.001 grams of shabu, and you get arrested. What will be the effect?
12 years old.
Same effect. Take pabakag, makapadayon pabakag eskwela, kung i-detain ka, for sure, dili, no? Let's say, dili ka rich kid, wala kay access to a private lawyer, magpaw ka. Makapadayon pabakag eskwela, most likely, dili. Maybe because kana mag-isod ka og bail. Say, bisan pag bailable ang ama. Ya, kung dili nakapadayon og eskwela, utang ta kana wala na napabay mo issue ni mo certificate of good moral character. Maybe wala na. But what was the reason? What was the motivation for wanting to use that substance? Was it to inflict evil on the world? Is it to sexually abuse or physically abuse others? What was the reason in that particular example that I gave you? Ganahan ra magtuon. I mean, di ba, gusto ra mo stay up all night kay magtuon. I mean, is that mala inse? The desire to stay up all night to study. You know already the difference between mala inse and malum prohibitum, right? You still remember your CRIM 1? Oh, so is it wrong by nature to want to stay up all night and study? Are you committing a wrong against other people? And yet, the consequence for your action, even though it was technically you're not harming other people. Maybe yourself, if there is you have a problem with how you use, right? And yet, the consequence is you check, you compare. Compare the penalties for violations of RA 9165 with penalties for rape, murder, carnapping with rape, carnapping with murder. And check where the similarities are. That is how heavy the penalties are for something that you're not even causing harm to other people. You're doing it to yourself. And the motivation is often, it's not because you want to destroy communities or destroy families or destroy other people's lives. This is also true for, let's say, the taxi driver who is caught because they need to stay up all night. Or in rural areas, there's actually a study that use of meth in rural areas is by, can you guess, what sector are using meth in rural areas? Wild guess lang. Wala mo yung mga hunaan. Mga tindero og masyaw, dili. Kanang mga maninda og balot, dili. Actually, fisher folk. There's an actual study that shows that it's the fishers who use in rural areas. Why? Because, especially because of, and it's related, and this is related to global warming, because they need to stay farther away from shore and they need to stay longer away. But why would you want to send people to jail for wanting to feed their families? Gets mo sa akong mga pangutana? And I hope these are things that you also reflect on. Because in many of our laws, most of the time, even if there's no criminal act, there is a penalty that involves imprisonment. And it makes you wonder, maybe aren't we taking too many shortcuts and putting too much on the shoulders of the criminal justice system on problems and concerns that should be managed by other agencies, other parts of our society. For example, if the problem is poverty, if the problem is a need to stay up longer to work, isn't that a social welfare issue? And if the problem is people become dependent and they need, let's say, people become dependent on drug use and they need rehabilitation, isn't that also a health issue? And yet our law prescribes criminal penalties for things that the criminal justice system shouldn't even be involved with. And if you really look at the laws that you study, you will see that this is true for so many things in the Philippines. Mga tiguang nga madakpan sa kilid-kilid nga nagbaraha. What is the penalty? 30 days imprisonment for illegal gambling. What could be the problem? Tinguling-no ang mga gores, kay way trabaho, mga retired na. Ba't nasaktan? Priso, imagine. And then, and I've always feel bad about this. Wala kay balo nga kung imo ding i-cut ang tree kay illegal deforestation na din na siya. And you could be imprisoned for that. But, manigingon nga, so to, ignorance of the law excuses no one. And yet, there's no bad intention. There's no, wala intention nga mangguba og environment, kinahanglan ng upang sugnod, kinahanglan ng pagpatukod og balay, di ba? But wala, the solution is always sending people to jail. Okay? The consequences are, if you become arrested, you experience so many forms of abuse, you experience being stigmatized because your reputation will be damaged. And not just your reputation, but the reputation of your family. And then your standing in your community becomes very negative. So you are seen as, lag, dakop man na siya, okay, drugs. Ana, di ba? Anang libakon, niya. Kumangita na din kag trabaho, mangisod na din ka. And so the cycle continues. Naganta mo daghang problema, no? Kay kamura bang the future of the legal profession and the legal system? I think it's important for you to hear this while you are still in second year, because usually in law school, we don't have time to analyze the laws. We only memorize them. But it's important to understand that just because something is legal, it doesn't mean that it's just. And it's going to be your role when you become lawyers to bridge that gap between what is legal and what is just. And often that means a need to examine the laws with a critical eye. Is this law really good for the people that it's supposed to protect and serve? Or is it causing more damage, not just to the persons who are directly involved, but also to their families and the communities that they are a part of? And that is something that I would invite you to do when you look at RA 9165. What good does it really serve? If the intention is to protect the health and welfare, why is it that so many people have experienced physical, sexual, verbal abuse? experience prolonged detention, experience stigma and discrimination, because the law says that people who are caught with these substances are criminals. Iban na kayo. Saturday night, party ng mga tao din. So you only have 10 minutes left. So may I ask each one of you 10 minutes. So I think by time, less than a minute for each. You had a guest before, right? Si Panky, who talked about his experience. For you, what was the most important lesson of what you heard about Panky's story? And I asked, can we start with the people at the back? What was the most important thing that you learned from what Panky shared with you? I'm sure very generously sharing of his life. Sige, para dili kayo madugay, 1 rep per row. Pili na lang mo, usa per row. Okay, 10 minutes na lang time. Kay para dili maurot mo time, nagtutod pa mo. Abogado na ba mo, ha? Di ba pwede magtutod sa court? Saban mo judge. Oo na dayon. Dili kay ko makaklaro, pwede mo duol. Sorry. Padulon ta mo. Ina.
At least come close na lang.
Go na dayon.
Lisa na ka.
Come closer, please, so I can hear. What was your most important learning?
I think just an insight, attorney, from the last talk. He highlighted how they themselves were also prior users as well. And like you mentioned earlier, people may have different motivations as regards why they turn to drugs, no matter what kind, may be injectables. But I think the good insight here is that there is always an opportunity for recovery. And in a sense that they themselves also try to help those who are also struggling with drug abuse. So if I connect it to your lecture earlier, what we talked about, let's imagine that if those people working under IDU care were in jail, could such an organization be formed in such a way that there is an opportunity for reform with current drug abuse individuals? So that was the thing that I focus on the most as well with my reflection paper, for example. So it's really a matter of, finding peers who have shared experiences. And if they're all in jail because, again, not everyone has access to legal aid, for example, and they don't know what to do. So I guess they're just lucky that they're there or they're out of jail to be able to help others, recover. So thank you.
Thank you. If I may just add something. Let's try not to use the word drug abuse. Let's not confuse it with drug use, because even according to the UN World Drug Report, only 11% of all of the people who are using drugs actually need any intervention. So if you do simple math, 100 minus 11, pila man na? 89? Sakto ba ako math? 89% of people who use drugs are not drug abusers. They don't abuse drugs. They are using without any need, without any problems. So they're able to function. They're able to continue with their daily life. Only 11% need intervention, only 11% need some form of assistance, whether it's rehab, whether it's a community-based treatment, whether it's assistance with how to regulate their use. So let's try not to generalize drug use, drug abuse. And that's just an important also point because it adds to the stigma against people who are using drugs. When 89% are, are able to live their lives. It's just that in the Philippines, because of criminalization, because so many are arrested and in detention, of course you'll have problems. Of course you'll have issues with getting work. That's why mas negative kaayo ang effect sa ato. So, sorry, wala na ko katawag og laing row. How about the next row? Inumdum pa mo? Pero bitaw, imagine ninyo kung ang ang mga taga-IDU care, imagine how many people they are able to serve. Yan, dili nila ma-serve. Although naka-experience po sila o some of them have experienced being arrested too and detention. Sige na. Row rep. Ayaw ka, wow. Kita-kita rin.
We have learned two things from the discussions with IDUCARE. One of which is that there is an importance of non-state actors in advancing the notion that advancing the notion of a policy shift towards a less punitive approach to drug use and to a more rehabilitatory kind of drug approach to drug use, which is centered around around the community of people from the grassroots. And the second one is that drug users aren't really this monolithic group, most of the state actors are pushing that they're these drug crazed maniacs who go about in society and do evil things and commit crimes. And because when you look at the discussions with Sir Panky and IDUCARE and the way he tells us about drug users, they're just normal people who tries to get by through life, and some of them are actually not this drug crazed maniac who wants to do evil things to other people, but just
most of them most of them are not.
Most of them are not. They're just regular people who have problems. Some of them have problems. Some of them just they see drugs as a sort of a boost to their daily lives. So yeah, two things. First is the importance of the non-state actors in pushing the shift towards a rehabilitatory policy towards dealing with drug users and drug abusers, because there are also people who abuse drugs. And of course that we have to be more humanitarian when we try to deal with people who use drugs, because you cannot just lump them up into a single group of people and perpetuate the stigma that is drugs is always correlated to crime, that drugs always lead to crime. So yun lang po that's what we learned about her.
Salamat. But let me just change, instead of rehabilitatory, maybe we can say public health or humane or socio-economic approach, because we can't assume that everyone needs to have, like you said, it's not a monolithic group. And if you remember, I told you earlier, only 11% need any assistance. So not everyone who uses drugs requires rehabilitation. It might not be the solution to all, for all. So it's important to make recognize that We have to meet people where they're at. It's a recognition that people who use drugs are just as human as the rest of us. The only difference, well, there's no difference. We also use substances. I mean, how many of you can't get up in the morning without coffee? How many of you need nicotine to survive? I mean, how many of you require alcohol to relax? Alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, they're also psychoactive substances. The only difference is that they're not illegal. So really, we're all the same. We're all using substances to get by. I mean, I speak for myself. You cannot talk to me before I've had my coffee or I will be a zombie. Anyway, and then for the first row, may I ask your representative to share?
So, what I've learned from the Sir Nadella's, Panky Nadella's lecture was that his goal of creating I Do Care was mostly letting these people who are IDUs, which are injection drug users, I believe, that the goal that if you are abusing drugs, it should not end into incarceration. What I think I understood from that lecture was that using drugs should not be something that is evil, that should be eradicated, that should result into incarceration or life imprisonment, or even in most cases violations of your human rights, but should be approached holistically. Just like you said earlier, normal people use substances to get by. So when Sir Nadella discussed about that, he said that he used marijuana for relaxation. It's the same way we use coffee for fun, for social purposes, for studying. And I think that it's a very important outcome in healthcare to recognize this drug abuse as such a similar to normal diseases. So that's what I got from I Do Care lecture.
Thank you, and I hope to get a little bit of your indulgence. I know it's already 6 o'clock. Just to wrap up lang our discussion. I'm thankful that you seem to have learned a lot from our community partners sharing, and I'm very happy to hear that. But it's for us also in Street Law, we ended up forming our organization because in 2017, the height of the very violent war on drugs, there's so many killings, thousands were incarcerated, and we attended so many meetings of lawyers where people would say, lawyers who have been working in human rights would say, mutabang mi, pero only if mistaken identity or dapat dili yung tinuod nga involved siya with drugs. But wala ba sa right to counsel, di ba? Dapat dili tinuod ka involved siya. Or dapat ka ng mistaken identity lang. So that was the environment that we were finding ourselves in. There was a gap because a lot of lawyers did not want to provide assistance if people are actually involved in drugs or actually using drugs. So we thought that we needed to come up with our own organization and work for drug policy reform while also trying to protect the rights of the communities, including those who are using. Because even our constitution does not say that your right to counsel means that you need to have a negative drug test. It's not in the requirements, right? Wala mo siya ingon ana. So what I wanted to make sure that you understood was arresting people, incarcerating people, subjecting people to abuse during arrest, during incarceration. It's not the solution to the very complex issue of drugs and drug use. It has caused more harm to people than the actual use of drugs themselves. Criminalization that has cause so much harm because it impacts not just the lives of the people who are arrested and incarcerated, but including their families, because the stigma extends to them. And it affects entire communities because it creates a relationship of antagonism and mistrust. And so the cycle of stigma and discrimination continues because we always look down on people who have an encounter or an experience of being incarcerated. We as a society are very judgmental when someone experiences arrest. It becomes much more difficult for people to find work. It becomes much more difficult for people to continue with school if they have experience with the criminal justice system. And it's a very traumatic experience. Even for us who are lawyers, it's traumatic. Imagine how traumatic it is for those who don't understand what's happening, who don't understand what their rights are under the law. And so we have an obligation as parts of the legal community, as members of the legal community, also work for changes in our policy so that it really reflects what are the needs, what are the humane solutions that our communities really need. And we can only do this if we actively involve communities of people who use drugs in policy making, in coming up with programs, because they are the ones who know, they have the experience and the expertise. But if we keep on arresting people and if we keep on, if it becomes a threat for people to admit that they are drug users, how can they participate in policy making? How can they participate in coming up with programs? If you are afraid to say that you are a drug user because you could get arrested or worse, you could get killed. And so we have a cycle of programs that are not truly responsive because there's no consultation from those that are directly affected. Do you see what I mean? Imagine if your law school created, let's say, a program where they want to help you study or they want to help you pass, whether it's your subjects or it's the bar exam. But only people consulted are your faculty member. No student is asked. No student participates in the planning of the program that will help our students pass their exams and pass the bar. Only faculty and administrative staff come up with the program. Do you think it will be truly responsive to the needs of the students if the students do not participate in the process? What if the faculty member is someone who took the bar in 1975 and does not understand what it's like to study in 2023? Do you think his or her suggestions would be relevant to your needs as a student of law in 2023? What do you think? Not likely, di ba? Not likely. It's possible that the program that would come out of it would be not responsive to your actual needs. The same as our people who use drugs. If programs do not consult, do not have space for those who actually experience it to participate in the planning, to participate in coming up with solutions, with coming up with, let's say, responses, there's a very big chance that the programs will not really be effective, will not really be responsive. But how can we involve people if they are afraid to say that they are using this substance because they could get arrested or they could get killed? So our criminal justice system and the way we criminalize people who use drugs actually prevent government from coming up with an effective response. As this is aside from the damage that is caused due to subjecting people to arrest, violations of human rights, stigma, and discrimination. Okay? So I hope when you become lawyers, when you become part of the whole legal system, whether as lawmakers, as policymakers, as people who implement, people who are part of the court system, you remember that do not just look at laws at face value, that not all laws, just because something is legal, it doesn't mean that it's just. And so we have an obligation to bridge the gap between what is legal and what is just. And that is also in the form of pushing for changes in our policy and changes in our. I hope that someday one of you would become representative of Congress from Cagayan de Oro and you will be a champion. But I hope also that we don't have to wait that long, that even as early as next year, there will already be steps to take to change our drug policies towards more humane public health evidence-based approach. I hope you learned something from my very depressing discussion today. But remember that as long as there is even just one person who will continue to do something to change things, then we will still have hope that things will always have a chance to improve. That maybe in the generations to come, we will not be talking about these problems anymore because there are already humane, evidence-based, responsive solutions in. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something from my discussion this afternoon.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Judge Ason, for the opportunity.
Later. Yeah.
Thank you
And
po.
they will give their reflection papers also. We'll let you know.
Ay, hala, sige. Pwede tayo ma-picture. Andun kayo mo.
How do we do that?
The screenshot, actually.
Screenshot na lang.
Everybody
Screenshot.
here siguro.
Okay ra, pwede ra ako mag-screenshot. Hindi akong lighting. Sige lang.
Kaya mag-screenshot ka from there.
I-move lang gamay chest ka para makita sila tanan.
Wait lang. Ako ingin akong self.
Out there.
Hindi man makita.
Here nga row. Start.
Direkta mo kay bati akong lighting. Pero sige lang ha.
Find your place.
Ready?
Self down here.
Some can sit down. Yung sa front can sit down. The back will sit front sit down. Okay.
Ready? Ready? Thank you. Okay, daghang salamat. Judge Azon, thank you kaayo. I will send you the screenshot sa Viber.
Kathy will just send you the certificate of participation.
No problem po. Daghang salamat. Amping.
Good night.
Good night po.